Okay, my name's Andrew Speirs from Meridian Agriculture, and I've been involved in the PTN, the Pasture Trial Network variety evaluations, which started in 2012. The sites that plots we're going to look at were sown in 2012, and we're looking at them now. So they've had 3 years of mowing and 2 years of grazing by animals, not under huge pressure, but some grazing with animals. So we'll start with the ryegrasses first, and this is AR1. Avalon AR1, just showing that we've lost a large number of plants over time with that. Base perennial ryegrass with AR37, more acceptable plant numbers, but we've still lost at least half of them. Victorian perennial, again, not a lot of plants left in that after the 5 years. We'll also show you the persistence counts at the end of 2016, which are a group of half a dozen slides, so you can actually look at these cultivars the whole trial. So the Victorian perennial ryegrass without endophyte, so nil endophyte Victorian perennial, has not persisted and been taken over by weeds. Clearly seeing a difference in persistence based on the endophyte type and presence or absence. So in our environment, endophyte plays a role in persistence, keeping pests away, and also managing heat stress. The same site we also had cocksfoots, so we had a range of varieties between summer active and summer dormant varieties. SF lazuli is a summer active variety, and we've really lost most of the plants in there. All we've got left is a bit of onion weed really, and a couple of cocksfoot plants. So again, the site wasn't overly fertile. It had an Olsen P of 15, but we certainly didn't overdo the phosphorus inputs. Curry cocksfoot, again, many more plants persisting, and a variety that did quite well both in dry matter and persistence. Our tall fescues, again, we had a range of summer active and winter active varieties. Tower persisted okay. But something like Advanced Max P, which is no longer on the market because of the Max P endophyte, but persisted very well. So again, giving a highlight that endophyte is important in regards to plant productivity and persistence, but you can have animal health issues with those endophytes, so understanding which endophyte you got is important. And we also had phalaenopsis in the site. Holdfast GT and Serosa, both have performed quite well in the site. And overall the phalaenopsis were quite productive and persistent.
So we've titled it sheep breeding equivalents for pastures, and really what we're looking for is to at least, we're certainly nowhere near to the point of ASBVs where we've got the really good accuracy and we've got 20 traits that we can work on. So I'm sorry, Stefan, but we're a long way further advanced than we were 5, 6 or 7 years ago. So it is very much a work in progress, and part of what we'll finish with is getting your input as to how we can take that further. So if you can participate in that at the end, that'll be good. The Casterton site is the one that I'll do most of my talking about. There's actually a group of cultivars at the back that have actually been dug up and come out of that trial site. So there's some ryegrasses there that really there's nothing much left. There's a couple of cocksfoots where there's nothing much left, and there's big variation in the ryegrasses, and then you've got phalaenopsis and fescues as well. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of where they are and what they are. Okay, and I think this might look a little bit weird, but really what we're trying to do with our pasture varieties is find out who has got pants on and who hasn't. So which ones do we want to keep? And which ones do we want to put in the cupboard, or say, no, you need to go back around behind the tent? So we're just trying to work out it's more important to work out, I think, the cultivars that aren't doing a job for us, and then choose out of the ones that are suitable. Because at the moment, how many perennial ryegrasses are on the market? 35, 40, something like that sort of mark. They might all be brilliant, but they might not as well, and for your environment and your management. So that's what we're trying to work through. Prior to 1996, there was merit testing by the DPI, and a pretty good protocol and a process that would actually give you a recommendation not only of a variety, but by rainfall and a sowing rate. And a lot of that data had stood the test of time, but our varieties have moved on from there, and there hasn't been anything in that interim period. So really, up until about 2014, it was trust us or look at the glossy brochure that's fallen out of the Weekly Times this week, but next week there's another one that's better. How do we sort that out? And then came along the PVTN, and that should say PTN. So the Pasture Variety Trial Network was a process between MLA and the seed industry to get everybody together, all the seed companies together, and agree to have trial so they could put in any variety of Phalaris, fescue, cocksfoot, all the grasses, subclover and lucerne, at no charge. So MLA were paying for them. They worked through with the seed industry, this is how we're going to assess them, but it was at no cost to the seed industry. So the PTN stuff was all funded by our levy pay, our MLA funding, but it got all of those varieties into the tent, and it got everybody from a seed industry exposed to it, but at no actual monetary cost to them, and they contributed their varieties to that. Excuse me. So that the PVTN is very much was an evidence-based system, very credible. All of those 6 sites were run by independent people, nobody who was actually working for a seed company. So Dave Harbison, for example, ran the one at Orange, and myself and Paul and others had the one at Casterton, and so they were all by people that weren't directly employed by the seed industry. They were independently audited by a Kiwi crew that have got merit testing up and going and had a bit of a protocol for that as well. So you had somebody completely outside coming and having a look at what we've done. And that's how that section of it worked. And then, so they were sown in 2011 and 12 from, basically up around Orange all the way through to Cressy in Tasmania, those 6 sites. And then the PTN started, so that the MLA formed from the donor company from the MLA was formed a partnership between the seed industry and MLA, and from 2014 on, all the varieties are half the money is paid by the seed company, the other half is by the donor company. So the seed company is paying, but at not a full rate. And at this stage, we changed from the PVTN. We knew all the lines, so all the lines were known. PTN. And this will change because I think we've all realised that we're big boys and girls and we can play nicely. At this stage they're blind, so you don't actually know what cultivars you've got, but I think everybody's getting a lot more trust in each other and understands that if I decide to give one variety a hard time at my site, there's 4 other sites across the country, I'll get the please explain as to why did that one perform badly at my site. So your own credibility is at risk playing those games. So I think that'll sort itself out. 2015, with another 7 sites established. So we're looking at annual ryegrasses, Italians, a lot of perennial ryegrass and fescues in that year. 2017, a much bigger spread of species. Sorry, am I on the road, right? And 2018 has seen another big lot of trials in. And overall, we've got 212 trials with 31 sites across the eastern seaboard, which is great. So obviously we've got to say the sites to start with. The trials are inspected at emergence and again in the end of the first year, and then they're audited annually from there. They're analysed by one statistician. So again, everything's going through the one drafting gate consistently. Currently, the establishment year isn't reported, and I think I'd like to see that be reported, so you've got some idea how long before you're able to graze some of these cultivars, because there's a big difference in that. All the cuts are grouped into seasons, so you've got a bit of an idea of what pasture curve you've got, and then they're reported through to the seed companies, and then they end up on the MLA site. And everybody signed the agreement that once your variety's in there, you cannot take it out. So if it's not performing very well, it has to go through the motion. So it really, again, it's back to has it got pants on or not. So this is the PTN website on the MLA site, and that's what you'll see on the front page. And you can go in by region, or you can go and look up all the trials on one species. Okay, and this is how some of the data is presented two ways. It's either in this sort of way or as a column graph, and all the data is presented with a significance level to it as well. So what we're working on here is the 5% significance level. So, for example, here Fletcher and Barnaby fescue, which is actually that's been pulled from the market because of a wild type endophyte that's in it, but it was in the Casterton site. These two for autumn data are significantly better, 95. So a significance level of 5% means 95% of the time they are significantly better than cultivars of a different colour. So if we go down to the orange ones, for example, Dovey and SF Royale, 95% of the time they will be better than Dovey and Royale. Does that make sense? So that's how you can look at the data and use it with some real confidence. Right hand side, the other piece of information you've got is the persistence. So that persistence is measured. We've got 12 metres of internal rows, so that it's six rows wide. We're measuring the internal 4 by 3 metres, so it gives you 12 metres of row. Presence of a plant every 5 centimetres is how it was counted. So you've got some here that are at sort of 98% Fletcher, so virtually every square there is a plant, whereas Festival, after 3 years, there's only 50% of those squares with a plant in them. Okay, bearing in mind these haven't been grazed at this stage, so haven't seen a hoof, all they've seen is a lawnmower. This is data that's not yet available, but again, I think this data goes back to the seed companies annually as how trials progressing. So perennials, the data doesn't get published until there's 3 years of data on that site. But here, this is a Birregurra site, perennial ryegrasses, sown in autumn 2016, and that's photos the first week of May this year. And we've only got 3 or 4 cultivars that are any good. So, no cockchafers. It was a dry summer, yes. We might have had transient root aphid there, but overall, Birregurra is the home of ryegrass seed production. So this, I think, really positively, this is like for the grain industry when a canola variety doesn't perform, gets put up in lights fairly quickly, and the breeders go, "Oops, we better go and find something else." So for a long time, this pressure hasn't been going back to the seed companies where it is now. So I think that will really benefit us in being able to get something that's useful for us. And quite intriguingly, these are not short season ryegrasses that are surviving either. They're more of the long season Hispanic types. Again, that just showing you where those 6 major sites were originally. This is the Casterton site at Barnall at the Cornish family. Gives you a bit of an idea of what it looked like pre-sowing. It had 5 years of cropping prior to this, so we've been able to. One of the other tricks is, especially with subclover, trying to find a site that hasn't got a background of subclover to be able to work with. So pretty easy to find a grass site, but somewhere where you can grow some subs, often quite hard. Just give you some photos of the first year of establishment, just showing that we, with all of our grasses, we had the rows filled, some in a slight curve, but they're all there. The perennial ryegrasses in year 2, again, just really performing well. Again, with the protocol is that the subclover has to be sprayed out of the grasses, and so the broadleaves, and so they're nitrogen fed. So the total dry matters are different because they're being hit with herbicides, so some of your autumn growth is staggered because you've given them a bit of an insult herbicide wise, and you're keeping them up with urea. So by May, into the 3rd year, we've actually got a number of cultivars here starting to fall out quite dramatically. And the other thing is that I think if we were grazing these paddocks or some of these cultivars, we would kill them in the autumn as well because they're pretty weak tillers. So, we give that a haircut and we give that a haircut. It doesn't hurt anything, and gradually that plant sort of recovers a bit through the year. Whereas if we put stock on it, you would have had the whole thing mowed out. The Speirs site at the end of year 1, plots. Year 2. The fescues again, one that's can be a bit finicky to get established, so we really did get good establishment of all of them. So what I'm trying to say is everything was there to start with. So the finished results that I'll show you are a result of stuff actually dying. The fescues in 13, so we're already starting to see a bit of culling. The lucens, which Alan will talk to later this afternoon, and the subclovers have established fairly well there as well. This is the other way the data's presented, is in a bar graph by season, okay, and all the varieties named. And here you can also, at the site, you can go in and view site information. So that'll give you the soil test annually, soil test results, what herbicides have gone over the site, and rainfall. So currently, years 2 and 3 rainfall data, all the data's there, but the dry matter productions for years 2 and 3 are combined into that, so it's the average of 13 and 14 data. The fescue data, the Speirs data here again, and again from a point of view of cirrhosis, sort of won the day for winter production, so it's significantly better than these others here. But what else might you want to know about a Speirs variety if you're going to sow it? You want production and persistence. So something like Cirrhosa is very erect, so is advanced AT. So it tolerates huge amounts of aluminium and a really important plant for that area, but you need to know that you can't flog it. So it needs to be managed differently to something like Holdfast GT, which was Richard Colvin selected as a grazing tolerant Speirs. So that can be abused. The subclovers, again, Cape Web was probably our biggest challenge, but again, there's 2 cultivars of sub versus another one that's really not competing. That, just quite a difference in early vigour. Putting this photo up just to show you that we kept the interrow clean so that we didn't have cross movement of sub varieties crawling into next door. This is one not from the PVTN, but this is actually a heritage trial. A heritage trial that I had sown in 2010. Again, in Western Victoria, we had 20 perennial ryegrasses there, and we managed to kill every one of them as well. We baited for crickets. We had mice in the site. We baited for them, but you can see they're the actual sowing rows of the perennial ryegrass. So apart from a little bit of seedling recruitment, even Vic's gone out of that environment. But Speirs and the 2 fescues, it just happened that photo had the 3 together, so that was, but we had 2 other fescues that survived fairly well as well. And interestingly, from a dry matter point of view, Banquet 2, but you've also got Holdfast GT in there, with the bulk of the ryegrasses producing a similar amount of dry matter in year 1. So, sometimes people say, we never get any grazing off Speirs in year 1. If it's sown in, that was sown last week of May, first week of June, they're quite similar. I think this is part of our reason for some of our heavy soils where we're losing perennial ryegrasses, because the physical cracking and tearing of that root system. And that's an extreme. We actually had to take cows out of that paddock, otherwise we were going to break legs. But when we see heavy soils cracking like that, I think we're doing a fair bit of damage to root systems underneath. And here's the pointy end of what we've got to. So at the end of the trial, the persistence of our ryegrasses. Again, light grazing, because you've got early, mids and late flowering. So as soon as you've got a variety starting to go up to head, its palatability drops, but you can't physically push the whole site hard enough to knock that down. So some grazing, but wouldn't say it's been flogged. But we've got a lot of varieties there around that 30% presence after after 5 years. Norm?
Just grazing based on 3-leaf, or how are you managing that grazing? Sorry.
Grazing there was based on, again, you've got variation in 3-leaf, but we were trying to go in at about 2.5 tonne, coming out at about 1,200. But hard to do because of that variation in maturity. But yeah, that's what we were trying to do. Cocksfoot's huge variation in persistence there. And we could see them in year 2. You just had varieties just falling out really quickly. Phalaris's, as you'd expect, a fair bit better. Tall fescues, again, a huge range. And again, the fescues are probably not on the best site. They'd prefer a much wetter site, but all the cultivars had to be in the one tent. All the varieties had to be in the one spot. That gives you an overview of the site. So the subclovers were there, the lucines there, our 30 perennial ryegrasses, Phalaris, Cocksfoot and fescues. There's the homepage for the Pasture Trial Network, and you can find it from there. A couple of people to thank. Mrs Cornish is where the trial site is. A lady, getting on in years just a little bit, but her vision and what she's been able to do over the last few years is incredible, and it just thirsts for knowledge. So it doesn't matter how old you are, it's the attitude from here up. She's quite an inspiration. And I'd like to acknowledge all of these people, the staff that helped with the site from Meridian, but I think MLA and specifically some of these people in the seed industry here have fought really hard to actually get a program together. It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what we had. And so again, we'll go through some questions on the right now to help get some more feedback, but I think they are to be commended for what they've done to this point.
Authorised by Victorian Government, 1 Treasury Place, Melbourne.